right. Item number 18 was pulled from the consent agenda with the sheriff's. Yeah. Okay.
I pulled it, so I guess I'm the one to start. I just have some questions about what we're purchasing here and why we're purchasing them. We want to buy 60 rifles, and some of these questions may sound redundant to the chief deputy because I've already covered some of them with him. But so, in case I double up a question, don't worry about it. Well, why do we need to purchase 60 rifles?
We have 56 sworn deputies. Every deputy that is full-time, which is 56, is outfitted with a handgun, which is law enforcement's primary weapon. And then the tertiary weapon system that we use is the rifle. At one time, we had handguns, shotguns, and rifles. We went down to 2. We dropped the shotguns from the program just for training, for spending less money on ammunition, and because of the way that training and the way that law enforcement is developed is that we need 2 different ranges. If any, the handgun, we qualify to 25 yards, but the effective range of a handgun in most combat situations is anywhere from 12 to 15 yards. Well, we live in a rural community. We live in a community that in most situations that we're going to have to address a threat that has firearms against us, we're going to need to extend that range out, and rifle is the weapon system to do it.
Did I misread this? You're buying 4 more rifles than you have deputies.
That is correct.
Why is that?
Because weapon systems, just like anything, they are man-made and they are fallible and they fail. If something goes on and we've got a weapon that goes down, we will temporarily issue another rifle to a deputy, and so we will keep on running. Also, there is expansion that goes on within the office. We've expanded several positions over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. If there was going to be an expansion of personnel, then we would already have some of that equipment available. So it answers several questions before the questions are even asked.
But each deputy that's there now has a rifle.
That is correct.
Okay. Are the rifles worn out? Why do we need to replace them?
The rifles that we have, they're over 15 years old. They have thousands of rounds through them. We have had some what I call catastrophic failures at the range, meaning that the first shot that is fired through that rifle, the rifle is down. The cartridge is stuck in the barrel. At first we thought that was a problem with ammunition, but we sent a couple of rifles off and we found that there was some warping, there was some stress fractures and warping in the barrel itself that we couldn't see with the eye, that we had to have those rifles replaced. If we're going to have a rifle that you can only fire one time, we might as well carry muskets. We don't need that. We need something that's going to work over and over and over again. So when the time comes, it needs to work. Then it's going to work and be an asset, not a liability to the person.
What caliber rifle are we using now?
5.56.
What are we going to?
5.56.
We're just replacing what we have.
We are replacing old with new. We are changing from the Ruger Mini 14, which is a weapon system that's based off of the M14 that was carried in the military for many, many years. We are moving to the Smith & Wesson M&P 15, which is an AR-15 style platform that is going to prove to be, if not as reliable, probably more reliable. And if we are going to have problems with the weapon systems, then we can fix the problems because they're military spec. We can get parts for them just about anywhere to keep our weapon systems up without having to send them back to Ruger, which is what we have to do with the Mini 14s, taking months at a time and then getting a rifle back. And a lot of times when we send it back, we get a new rifle back from them. So it's this isn't a decision that has come quickly. This has actually been something that's been in the works and in the planning for over 2 years now.
This is a more than $40,000 purchase.
Yes.
Are we required to bid that? I'm asking the manager.
It is equipment, so it is they can get informal bids on that.
So, okay, how many people are we going to get prices?
We have gone to one vendor, and we've gone to them several times. And we've also negotiated through Smith & Wesson, through that vendor, to try to get the absolute bottom dollar price that we could get for that weapon system.
I just have a problem with, I thought it was $25,000 or more and we had to bid. We don't.
I think it's 50.
I can go grab my book.
I think it's
I'll go
50.
grab my book if you want me.
I think it's 50, Brian. I'm pretty.
I didn't bring it. Let me just grab it. But there's an informal range, and you're inside the informal range.
Charlie, are these rifles, do they sit inside of the car or are they in the trunk of the car?
Depending on what vehicle it is in.
Okay.
We've got some vehicles that have rifle racks in them, and we have some that are secured in the trunk of the vehicle.
These vehicles come with a carrying case, excuse me.
I'm sorry?
Do they come with a carrying case?
That they are going to have a carrying case with them.
How many rounds do you fire through these rifles per year as far as on the range?
Some more than others. At a minimum, it's going to be about 200 rounds through each rifle. But there are several, up to a dozen. A dozen's probably a really good number, that we're going to have 1,000 plus rounds through. We've got a handful of deputies, about a dozen that are trained more. They receive more advanced training in making entries into residence and things of that nature. We've got about a dozen deputies that are going to spend more time at the range and more in training. That if we've got a barricaded subject that we can set a perimeter around, then we're going to call those deputies that have a little bit higher training in to take care of the issue that we've got.
Okay, I got something else that's not related to, well, it is related to guns, but how well are we ready for something like that happened in Dallas? Are we ready for something like that?
No. We received training. We do more training than what is required by the state when it comes to active shooters. And a lot, the public still has a misunderstanding of what an active shooter is. Active shooters, even from 5 and 10 years ago, the definition has changed. Where most people, when they think about an active shooter, they're thinking about something that occurred over the last 3 or 4 weeks in a handful of different places, where you have mass casualty situations, where you have where you have tons of law enforcement that are responding and taking care of something that takes place over hours and hours. Well, an active shooter could be a spouse of someone going to a workplace and have an intended target that turns into something else, and we have to be ready for that as well. So to answer your question, no, we are not prepared, but we are as prepared as we can be with the level of personnel we have and the level of funding that we receive for training and the level of training that we do.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Manager. Hold on, Mr. Manager, go ahead.
$100,000 or more that's in the formal range.
Oh, really?
So less than 100,000 from 30 to 99.9 is informal range. And then you also have the issue of it being essentially a sole source purchase because they're going directly to the manufacturer. There is no other manufacturer of AR-15s that you're looking for.
But your quote is from a dealer in Raleigh. It's not from.
That's correct, because you cannot just go straight to Smith & Wesson and make a purchase. They're going to send you to one of their dealers for you to take a purchase, and just like with everything else, and this goes with everything that we do, everything at the sheriff's office that we do, every purchase that we make. The sheriff is adamant about rules and laws and policies. It's almost to the point where it's annoyingly so, that I've got to step and I've got to go over a state statute, I've got to go over local rules, and when it comes to making purchases, I have to make sure that we're complying with as many of the county policies as I can before I do anything. Then after that, I check with the county manager and the finance officer before you even receive that. So that is done with every purchase, but especially the major purchase because, well, plain and simple, we get scrutinized a little bit when it comes to making purchases. So we want to make sure that we're doing it right.
One more thing. What are we gonna do with the guns that we have now?
That's actually part of the deal, that with the making the
So you
purchases
ship
of
them
that.
back to the factory.
We have negotiated a trade-in price with the vendor. And that took several times. They wanted to give us one number, we negotiated it up into the tune that we're gonna turn in 40 rifles. And right now, what's on paper is we'll get $300 per rifle. So we'll have $15,000 out of that we can use towards this project to bring the price down. Now, if we turn in the 40 rifles and they find something that within a couple of them and they can't do that, then of course that is subject to change. But once again, this hasn't been taken lightly. This hasn't been taken quickly. We've been thorough on it, and we're trying to do what's best to be stewards of the county's money in the projects that we're taking on.
What happens to the other 20 rifles?
What's that?
What happens to the other 20 rifles?
We do not have
I
we do
thought-
not have 60 Mini 14s to turn in. We've got 40 Mini 14s, and then we've got several others that are either Car 9s that have been transferred over to 5.56, and we've got several M4s to make up the amount that we've got that everybody has a rifle.
Well, what happens to those 20 rifles?
We are going to evaluate, because most of those rifles are in the hands of the narcotics investigators. Some of those rifles are fully automatic, but they are also older, so we're going to evaluate to make sure that they are good to go. If they are, we may keep some and not purchase the full amount of 60, but we need to have approval so we can go on with that, so we can make the full if we need to. And once again, if there's rifles that we can keep because we have kept them up because they're the AR platform, then we will, and then we'll purchase less than 60 rifles.
What I would like to do is when you do this deal, that you give us an accounting of the rifles. How many were turned in, how many you still have, how many you purchased.
Okay. Which, that's going to happen anyway, but yes, we'll make sure that
Commissioner
that was
Buzzio.
part of the deal to turn it in to the county.
The funding has already was approved in the 2017.
Yes, it was.
2017 budget. All we're approving is the purchase.
That is correct.
Correct?
Yeah.
All right, what else is on it?
That takes care of me on guns. If anybody else has any questions,
You have vehicles in this as well.
yeah, vehicles, we'll go to the vehicles.
I just have some simple questions. Are these vehicles patrol vehicles or investigative vehicles?
Yes and yes.
They're both?
Yes, you'll have 3 vehicles that are going to be frontline patrol vehicles. You're going to have a pickup truck that's going to be utilized by the first
Oh,
sergeant.
you don't have to tell me on that. I'm just,
Yes, but if you'll just give me a little bit, that helps me as I'm
Okay.
going through.
I'm going to ask you, so anyway, so go ahead.
Okay. So we've got First Sergeant of Patrol is going to get a pickup. He is in charge of all training, and he is the primary firearms instructor that we have. He needs to move stuff around, so he's going to get a truck. It's going to be 4-wheel drive, which is going to add to fixing the issues that we had over the last couple of years of not having enough 4-wheel drives. There's going to be another pickup that's going to be purchased that is going to be driven by the sergeant of the SROs, who is already in a pickup. He is driving a 2000 model Chevrolet Silverado that has 230,000 miles that we've just recently had to replace the transmission in. We're still going to try to keep that, but that truck is on its last legs. And if it makes it through another year, I'd be surprised on that. So we're looking to change that. And then 2 SUVs. We're going to put the sheriff in an SUV and reutilize the vehicle that he's in. And then SUV is going to go to the lieutenant of patrol, once again, a lot for the same thing as the first sergeant. He's responsible for logistics and unusual situations. He has to move stuff, whether it's meals, whether it's equipment to and from wherever the guys are in the field. So we're going to put him in an SUV.
my last question is, why did y'all take Beaufort County out of Plainview on those cars?
Okay. Beaufort County was in the stripe on the marked vehicles. The stripe was eliminated. We tried several mock-ups and markups with Beaufort County either on top of sheriff or near it, and none of them looked good. Beaufort County is still in the badge that's on the side of the vehicle, and we've added the Beaufort County Sheriff.org, I believe it's org, on the back of the vehicle. So it's still there, and believe me, people still see it because if I have a deputy that's driving 5 miles an hour over the speed limit in Wilson County, I get an email about it. You know, so it's still being seen and being read. But that was what the decision was.
I got one more question.
Yes, sir.
How many patrol cars or detective cars do you have with regular plates on?
If it is not a marked vehicle, we do not have a permanent
So
tag on
any
it.
unmarked vehicle has a regular plate on it?
That is correct. And the reason that we do that, if I'm allowed on that, is because we use those vehicles in so many different ways. The vehicle that I'm driving, I drive most of the time. But if another part of the agency needs my vehicle for a certain task, then they use my vehicle. And that's the same way with any of our cars, any of the vehicles that we use.
How many is it?
We've got, there's probably, this approximation, 35 with permanent and probably about 35 with private.
How many utility vehicles we have?
I'm sorry?
How many utility vehicles we have?
How many?
Right now, utility vehicles.
SUVs.
So SUVs?
Yes.
7?
Okay, and we're getting ready to get 2 more.
Yes. And just to throw it out there, I've not anything that I'm hiding. Been saying it for 2 years. With 70 vehicles in the overall fleet,
We
we
not
need to have anywhere from 10 to 12. SUVs, we need 10 to 12
we're not
trucks.
accusing you to
Yes, sir.
trying to hide anything.
Yes, sir.
I'm just not going to hide anything from the public.
Sure.
That's the reason I asked it. I'm going to vote for you to get the cars.
One of those vehicles is a crew cab. One of those pickups is a crew cab.
If we buy a truck, we look to buy crew cabs, yes, sir.
Why is that?
Because there are certain times where we will cram 6 deputies into a crew cab truck so we can get right up on top of a house when we're trying to grab somebody out of it that is either running away from us or is deemed dangerous to us.
You don't want to take 4 or 5 vehicles to,
Yeah, a lot of times that's exactly how it is.
Yep.
Once again, it's for multi-purpose use. If I have a regular cab truck, that limits me on what I'm going to do and what the purpose I'm going to have. You know, I go back to something that I've said several times. If you go to Walmart and you look at the vehicles that are in Walmart's parking lot, you see sedans, you see trucks, you see SUVs, you see sports cars. Our fleet needs to be made up of sedans, trucks, SUVs, and sports cars. We need to be able to blend in and go anywhere, and sometimes we need to be able to turn onto your road and you see our vehicle and not go, that's a law enforcement vehicle.
I'm being
I can do that.
I'm just being facetious now, but I'm also being truthful. Please don't buy a vet.
How many cars are you
I'll buy
going to turn in when you buy these vehicles?
Well, we always look at everything when it comes to surplus and vehicles. We're at the point now where we've got 4 spare vehicles. That's actually kind of high, but we need 4 spare vehicles to keep deputies in vehicles when their vehicles in the shop. Right now, we're at a good number. So if we look to get 7 vehicles, we're going to look to surplus 7 vehicles.
You're going to surplus 7 vehicles.
That's, if that is what we're looking to do right now.
Well, I have a couple of comments on this now that we have this information. Number one, I think 35 cars unmarked is too many unmarked cars. It doesn't give the sheriff the presence that we need in order to deter crime. Because let's face it, having that sign on the side of that car is an important item insofar as the public knowing that somebody is there, because most of what you guys do is deterrence and your presence. So my opinion is 35 cars is too many unmarked cars. My second opinion is that, we're again buying a Cadillac when we need a Chevrolet. I think buying these SUVs and all this other fancy stuff, I just don't see the need for it. There's only 3 patrol vehicles in this purchase of 7. So I have a problem with, shall we say, overspending the county's money on these vehicles. We're buying more vehicle than we need.
Okay, too many unmarked vehicles.
Yeah.
Our job, and I'll disagree with you on what deterrence is. Deterrence is somebody commits a crime, and then before people forget about it, they're sitting in the jail. We had several home invasions that within weeks of work that was not done by driving around a marked patrol car, but that was done by using surveillance in multiple counties, by drawing enough interest from multiple communities to the fact that we arrested people before people forgot about the crimes in general. The job of the sheriff is to prevent as much crime as we can, and we'll do it by deterrence of driving around, but we will also do it by being in the shadows and fighting in the shadows with monsters that we know exist, and that's important that we know that they exist, because that's where we are trying to fight them.
Well, my opinion has not changed. Half of the sheriff's cars being secretive vehicles is not a deterrent to crime. You need some vehicles that are unmarked. I agree. At one time, the sheriff's department rented a lot of vehicles.
And we still do.
When they needed them as to be unmarked vehicles, to be unidentified. But it's too many cars. Your deterrence is the presence of the law, does as much deterrence as anything else. And I can argue to you as an equal argument that if you'd have had 10 more cars out there identified with the sheriff, those guys might have gone to another county to do what they were doing. So
I'll ask for 10 more deputies in next year's budget.
either one. No. We're talking about marking the cars you already have. We're not talking about increasing the police force. So, I'm sitting on the fence as to whether to vote for this or not to vote for it, because I consider it to be overspending. I probably will vote for it, but,
I'll even go on that, is that you're saying that we're buying too many Cadillacs. Well, when we're not buying a Cadillac, I love to have one. I love to have a Cadillac. All the vehicles that we buy, they're at contract, at state contract, or under state contract, or either on pre-negotiated, all which falls within the policies that we have in making the purchases. It is unfair. It is unfair that we can go purchase a Chevrolet Tahoe for $15,000 to $17,000 less than what a civilian can go buy one. It's unfair that I can do the same thing and buy a truck for $10,000, $15,000 less than what a civilian can go buy one. But if I need a certain tool, and we can go out and we can buy those tools in the same allotment that you've allowed us to make purchases for marked patrol cars, which is what I asked for. Every time that I put something before the commissioners as far as purchasing a car, it's based on a marked patrol car that's equipped. If we can deal and negotiate with dealers, whether they're across the state and other states or local, and get the same deal or better on more car than what we can buy as a marked patrol car that's equipped, that's not a bad deal for the county. That's, in fact, my opinion.
You're still
that's a
buying more
great deal.
car than you need.
I disagree with you on that.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to say at 2 o'clock in the morning, when I dial 911 and I need for you guys to be there, it doesn't matter whether you've got anything on the outside, as long as you've got a blue light and you can get there extremely fast. I mean, I don't know what the mix is, whether it needs to be 35, 35, or 40, but most of those things are going to happen during the night. I mean, that's when people come in our neighborhood snooping around trying to be up to no good. So,
Several months ago now, there was a call at Snowden Elementary that they called an active shooter. That's what it was called, an active shooter at Snowden Elementary. For years, we were trying to figure out what type of response we can get to Aurora and how long it would take. The call came in at 5 o'clock. It ended up being a hoax, so it was great. But we had over 30 law enforcement officers that responded to that scene. The first 3 were there within 2 minutes in Aurora. At that particular point in time, I didn't care what type of vehicle they had, or how many markings, or how many not markings, or what county they came from. But over 20 of those law enforcement officers that responded and got there were sheriff's deputies, 4 of which were already home or not working that day, that heard about what was going on, put their stuff on, and went to the school.
All right. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I want to, we've had this discussion about firearms and cars and vehicles, and as far as I'm concerned, from a law enforcement perspective, you know what's needed in this county. The sheriff's office knows what's needed in this county, and only you can decide what type of weapons you need and what kind of vehicles you need in order to enforce the laws of this county and the state.
Thank you.
I'll call the motion, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Opposed? entertain a motion.
You got it?
All in
Second.
favor? We're out.